now. So welcome to Gab with the Gardeners, September 28th. It is the end of September. Hard to believe that this growing season is starting to slow down, but it's still warm here in North Platte, and we do have some rain showers coming in and some cooler weather's coming. So the gardens are going to slow down. They're still producing tomatoes and other produce, but we want to give some updates. Brenda is not in the office tonight, so I will be giving you the presentation that she has put together on canning, on preserving. We have lots of people asking questions about canning, and you can contact her at our extension office number, which is on the slide set, at 308-532-2683, or Brenda's email is boftencamp1@unl.edu, and this is the address that you have on your slides tonight. So one of the big things that Brenda's been working on is working with tomatoes. Lots of questions on tomatoes. The cooler weather has started here in later August, and once we started to see cooler temperatures, then the tomatoes started turning. And of course, everyone's really interested in canning and preserving. So these are just some notes from her. It is very simple, and if you want paper copies, we can mail them to you if you want. So tomatoes can be preserved as simply tomatoes, plain tomatoes, in boiling bath or pressure canning. You can dry them and you can also freeze them. And when we do canning with tomatoes, there must have acidification added when doing tomatoes. So there are 3 accepted options on that, which would be bottled lemon juice, citric acid, and vinegar. So those are on here. Brenda's notes say that lime juice should not be used in place of lemon juice. So that is a very important point she wanted to convey. And bottled is required as the acidity of fresh lemons is not known. So that is really important. So it's required because of fresh tomatoes is not known. What has happened on the horticultural side, I apologize, is that people wanted less acidity in their garden tomatoes. And so that acidity level has been bred out as new varieties have been raised by more and more gardeners. So we do not know that acidic level, according to Brenda. So that is why you must use bottled lemon juice, citric acid, or vinegar. So another comment is overripe and soft tomatoes or damaged tomatoes where there are cracks or insect bites in them or any type of damage has a drastically lower acidic level. And tomatoes should not be used if they come from dead or frost-killed vines. So those are just some quick tips from her on plain tomatoes. The other one is on preserving salsa. And we have lots of people that raise tomatoes and peppers to simply raise salsa or to can their own salsa. And her notes here are very simple. It's to follow the recipe. Very simple. Do not deviate from that recipe. Use only approved salsa recipes for canning. So those are coming from our extension resources. Underripe green tomatoes or tomatillos can be substituted for ripe tomatoes. One type of pepper can be substituted for another. So if you do not care for jalapenos or hot peppers, you can put bell peppers or sweet peppers in their place, just the same quantity. Canned green chilies can be substituted for fresh. So if you do not have the fresh chilies, you can buy the canned version and use that. Red, yellow, or white onions can be substituted for each other. Do not increase the amount of onions. So when the amount is listed in a recipe that's been tested by extension, it cannot be increased. You cannot increase the amount on that recipe. Green onions cannot be used in the place of bulb onions. So that is another note. Fruits, Do not use ripe fruit in place of green or unripened fruit in recipes. So some people use peach, make peach salsa, and specifically the recipe is for unripened peaches, for instance. And it is not safe to increase the amount of spice or herbs. So what Brenda is saying here is that these recipes have a set of ingredients that have been tested in the USDA lab at the University of Georgia, and they have been balanced. So they are shelf stable and do not have any potential for a foodborne illness if the process is followed step by step correctly and has a shelf life up to 18 months. So when you see a recipe in a extension publication, you cannot deviate from it. The only things here are the substitutions that she has listed. And then the last set of resources that she wanted to share on the canning side is the National Center for Home Food Preservation. That is a facility at the University of Georgia that I referenced, and that is the address there for uga.edu. So that is a wealth of all kinds of canning and food preservation resources for you. We also have the Nebraska Food website that Brenda wanted to share. And that is this website, this https go.unl.edu food preservation. And then also, if you would like to check our extension office website in North Platte, the address is LLM, standing for Lincoln, Logan, and McPherson counties, .unl.edu, as we are a 3-county unit for Lincoln, Logan, and McPherson counties. So any of those resources will have information on food preservation. So that is what Brenda has to share on her slides for tomatoes and salsa. And then she had another resource that I'm going to share here is on apples as we start to think about fall time. And here's that fact sheet for you. So here's some different ways of utilizing apples as they start to become available on the home trees in your orchards, or if you have a tree in the backyard, and some ideas, or if you simply want to purchase from the farmer's market or the grocery store. So here's a recipe for applesauce. And then here also is some information using a multi-cooker. Brenda has taught classes on using a multi-cooker, so that is included here. And if you had signed up for class, this information will be sent out to you, has been sent out to you. If you have not registered for class and are watching this video, you are welcome to email us and get this information. We'll be happy to send it to you on email or to print it out and mail it a hard copy to you. So one or the other, we can happily be able to send this to you. So it gives the instructions and talking about using the best type of apples for different types of dishes. So it's listed as applesauce, apple butter, jelly, jam, apples that are best for freezing, and the ones that are best for dehydrating. So she has lots of resources here. This was just something that she wanted to share with the group tonight, talking about the correct food choices, how do you select apples, how do you store them, freeze them, dry them. It's a wealth of information. And then also we have our addresses once again for the National Home Food Preservation Center at the University of Georgia and their web address, or the Nebraska Extension food.unl.edu website is also very handy. So she wanted to share this information with you. So we have this information for you for her, and she apologizes that she wasn't able to join us tonight, but she did want to share information with you. So Sharon, do you have any questions on any of the information that you've seen so far?
Yes, I do. What is a tomatilla?
A tomatia, I can get a picture for you here.
Okay.
A tomatia, it's kind of a fun vegetable to raise. And so it looks like a tomato in a husk. And we raise these guys. I've actually seen these shown at county fairs and the Nebraska State Fair, and they are in a husk. And they're a small green fruit, and they're relative to the tomato. And so once the outside paper husk becomes dry, it's ready to harvest. And so they're used in a lot of ethnic Latino foods, Latino dishes. So
can you use them in place of a tomato or not?
I believe you can, and that, as I said in that PowerPoint presentation. So that is in there. So yeah, it produces a plant that looks kind of like a pepper plant with pepper leaves. If you think of a sweet pepper of a jalapeno, and it produces this pod with the husk, and the husk is a protective outside. Once that husk dries up, then you can harvest it. So that's the picture of the tomatillo. So we do see dishes served with tomatillos. You can actually make salsa with tomatillos, for instance, but Brenda's the resource to contact on that. And you can email her, but there's lots of good stuff on this. As we see some more of these ethnic foods raised in gardens here, we start seeing people trying them. We also see more of the variety at the grocery store, the farmer's market as well. It's an easy plant to grow. Grows very similar to a tomato or a hot pepper or bell pepper. You would treat it as the same thing, and they're in the same plant family. So you would want to raise those in the same way and rotate them in the garden, just like you would a tomato or a pepper.
Under that husk, is it green or is it red?
It is green.
Okay.
Once the paper dries up, you'll see an exposed green tomatillo.
Okay.
And I'll show you a picture. So let's look for a picture here on the sharing. And so this is what the tomatillos will look like.
Oh, okay.
So here's a snap ed from USDA. So it is a neat vegetable, and it is something that is utilized in SNAP Ed work for food stamps. The food stamps program, it's a vegetable. You'll see it. It looks like a little green tomato.
Yeah.
And here is some information, if the link is good, on recipes for tomatillos. So I can show that to you quickly if they have anything. So these are the things that you would use it for. So this is from USDA. So avocados, avocado salsa, tomatillo salsa, there's chili verde, chicken with vegetables, refried beans, salads. So it's got some neat things there. So this would be an approved recipe source on how to utilize this vegetable.
Okay.
So it's kind of some interesting things.
Thank you.
And it's an easy vegetable to grow. To grow them, they're a very easy vegetable to raise. So if you know how to raise tomatoes or peppers, very similar, very, very similar.
Okay. Thank you.
So on my side, I am teaching with pictures on my slide set. So here's my contact information here in North Platte, and some really good diagrams that I've found lately as I was preparing for Husker Harvest Days. we did a booth at the UNL building at Husker Harvest Days on trees and showing that trees are so much more useful than shade, that they have so many other functions, especially working with windbreak shelter belts, tree plantings around farmsteads and acreages is very important, as well as communities. So our small communities are very much impacted by our trees, as well as our towns and even our cities. But trees are very misunderstood about their root system. So on our first set of pictures here that I want to show you tonight is a diagram of the root system. Trees do have larger structural roots that go down into the soil, but they do not have a taproot strictly like a carrot in the sense that all the root is going to go straight down. It's going to spread out. It's going to find its way and establish itself in the soil to form an anchor. And then most of the root activity is right in that first foot of soil depth. And this is the mat of fine fibrous roots that go out from the tree in every direction. This is where we need to water our trees, is be under the canopy and also beyond the drip line. So you'll see these perforated lines on the sides of the canopy of the tree. That is the drip line. We need to water beyond. And
Okay.
we get the comment that, well, I water my lawn with the sprinkler system, that'll water the trees. That is correct to a point. Trees need infrequent, deep watering, meaning that they need to have some deep soaking waterings every so often, especially during the heat, especially during a dry period. So dry period can be late fall, it can be winter, it can also be the summer or any other time of the year. So it's more than just the summer, but people get so used to just simply turning on the sprinkler system in their yard, thinking that they have adequately watered the trees, which is not the correct case. Watering a lawn will get you to 3.5 inches to 4 inches deep. Trees ideally needed to be watered in the first foot. And we need to do that every 3-4 weeks to keep everything hydrated out. And so this picture on your right side is a color picture, came from the Master Gardeners in San Diego County, California, and I think is a really good diagram. It shows blue triangles. And these blue triangles are the areas where we need to water the trees beyond the drip line into the lawn using a drip line or feeder lines or a low-lying sprinkler, where we just literally are going to soak that area very slowly. And when we can tell we have watered adequately is when we can take a long Phillips head screwdriver or a piece of sharpened rod shoved into the soil. If it goes into the soil 12 inches into moist soil, we've watered that area adequately for the tree, which is very different from what we hear when people just turn the sprinkler system on. Another good recommendation on this diagram is that we need to put mulch out under our trees. A number of people will have trees in the middle of their lawn and have a horrible time trying to keep grass alive. Well, part of that is the tree's response to competition. As a tree is actively growing and it has a full canopy, the light is not present for the grass to really thrive and be thick. So instead of having grass under the tree, we would like to see mulch under the tree, from not right up to the trunk, but as the trunk goes out, we can start putting that mulch layer and really no more than 3 inches deep. That helps the soil moderate the temperature, doesn't go through the rapid swings of moisture back and forth, but it also allows us to keep the competition from the grass away. So our grass competition is not present, it is gone. And also our ability to keep that area hydrated without cutting off the oxygen. If we put too much mulch on a mulching, for instance, we can cut off the carbon dioxide and oxygen exchange. Sometimes we will see what we call a mulch volcano, where we have big piles of mulch literally piled up to the trunk of the tree, and it looks like a volcano is formed around the trunk. That's something we have to avoid. And I know that some landscapers or maintenance crews will do that because they do not want to mess with mulching the tree any more than they have to. It's done once and then it's done for the year. What that does is it reduces the oxygen and carbon dioxide exchange. It forces roots to come up into that mulch and causes a very unhealthy environment. Also, pests and rodents burrow into that deep mulch, and then they can chew and cause damage to bark and go into the cambium layer under the bark and cut off the xylem tubes that move water and nutrients down throughout the tree. So very, very dangerous and very damaging. So just two pictures that really speak a lot towards what's going on and to help us out, have a better idea of exactly where those roots are and where we really truly need to water. So that's very important. So we also need to think about trees as a vast root system, and that these tree roots do intermingle with neighboring roots. They do go into foundations. They can creep into sewer lines. They can crawl under the roadbed of a street in a neighborhood. So for the height of the tree, that's the first indicator. And then you need to take that height estimate and triple that number times 3. So if we have a 10-foot tree, the effective root mass in every direction can be up to 30 feet. And that's a lot further than most people think. So that's why I wanted to show this set of pictures to you, that these roots go all over the place and that they move around and they are looking for moisture. So if we can keep our watering in these blue triangles every 3 weeks to water our trees deeply, that would really help the health of our tree, especially during the extensive dry periods. So even when the ground has not frozen, it's a good idea in fall to give our trees a very healthy drink going into winter to help them from winter desiccation.
So watering, do you
go ahead.
use, when you water, just set the sprinkler or let the hose run? What specifically should you use to water that tree for?
You can use a
while.
low-lying sprinkler, so something like the whirlybird sprinkler that spins the water around low is good. A soaker hose is good. You could use a drencher, which is a capsule-shaped creature that you screw onto the end of your hose, and it helps distribute water out more evenly. Those are good things that you can do to water. So, or just turn on a sprinkler and just turn it on low. Don't have it flying up in the air 6 feet tall. So that's really good to just let those go. It may take a couple hours. It depends on your soil type. If you have a heavy soil that takes a while for water to percolate through, it may take a while compared to sandy soil. So if you lived on the lake, such as McConaughey or out at Maloney, for instance, water drains very, very quickly. So it depends on your soil and how that water percolates through.
I live on hard pan.
Yes, and so it's going to take you a while to water, and watering slowly will be very important for you.
Okay.
Let it sink in.
Thank you.
Our next picture is a picture from North Dakota State Extension. It is the peony root. So we have people that are digging up peonies even now. So you can see that these peonies need to be planted fairly shallow in the ground, and they need to have what we call eyes. So you see this diagram here that points you to the eyes. The eyes look similar to the eye of a potato, the eye on seed potatoes. And so we do not want to bury them too deep. We have a tendency to do that on accident. So 2 inches is all the deeper that you need to go. If you were in hard pan, you would probably plant them 1 inch deep, where the eyes are only 1 inch deep under the soil surface.
Okay.
I wanted to show people that these roots have to have, they have to be shallowly planted, and now is the time to plant them. So get them ready for the season. Peonies are a plant that can live forever in a spot if they get full sun, and that people will divide them. A lot of those are heirlooms or family treasures. So they want to keep those going. And so they will dig them up here in the fall. They will divide them out. You need to make sure that you take only nice, heavy, solid peony roots with the eyes attached to them. You need a minimum of 2 eyes per division of root to plant back. So it's very important. Anything that is mushy or is rotten to the touch needs to be removed with a clean, sterile knife, such as a paring knife. So sometimes we do get that. We do get slimy roots. So we want to get those removed. So we do not want to pass any disease onto the new divisions. The next picture that I have up here is a picture from Oregon State Extension that I borrowed from one of their publications. And this is a bed of perennials that have a nice layer of mulch. Notice that it's not deep mulch. It's only a couple inches and doesn't have to be colored. Some people will buy the colored bagged mulch, which is perfectly fine. But we're trying to encourage the use of organic byproduct mulch. So that's really important to use. You can also use shredded leaves as mulch. Works really good. You can make your own compost, or you can purchase compost, and you can use that as a layer to give some winter protection as well. So no deeper than 2 inches deep. So that's very important to have. So just very shallow layers, but protects them, especially newly planted plantings that you have. In this case, there's some smaller plants in this bed, and so that may help overwinter them, because the shrink swell of our soils, especially heavy clay, it's nice to have a little bit of a blanket over them for the winter. And you can rake that mulch back in the spring. So it gives them a little bit of protection, especially if we have a wickedly cold, dry winter with a lot of wind.
Okay.
Our next picture is just a simple piece of disease plant material that is tomato blight, which we see lots of tomato blight every year in the garden. This is what you should not send to the compost pile. As your tomatoes and your vegetables die out, as they are finished for the season, you need to take your diseased plant material and discard it and not compost it. Or if you have used plant material, if you have plant material that has an insecticide to kill insects, or a fungicide to kill some type of blight like our tomato blight, do not use that in the compost pile. We cannot guarantee in the composting process, even under ideal conditions, that we would get rid of the blight. The blight would be killed off in the composting process. So we only use healthy plant material to compost with. Diseased plant material should never be tilled into the garden either. So we need to remove that. And also anything that is insect infested. So if you had squash or zucchini or vine crops that had a lot of squash bug or squash vine borer in them, remove that, because that is a place for those pests to overwinter the next year and increase the population on accident for the next growing season. So we want to remove that diseased material or insect infested material. It's also very important to clean out any plant debris on the perimeter of your garden, because that's also a hiding area for that material, for those insects that will transmit the diseases to live over the winter. So this is more of just a reminder to never compost this material that's diseased or insect infested, or never till it back in. We also are getting more people that are stopping tillage in their gardens and doing more knifing in of organic matter with a potato fork or a spade, and that helps increase the microbe population and keeping it growing instead of tearing that population apart with the tiller. So we are seeing more people going to more no-till vegetable gardening programs, and that's why it's really important in this case, if they're going to do that, to not leave diseased or plant or insect infested plant material in the garden behind for the winter. Because then we would have to go to what we call rescue treatments using insecticides and fungicides to control the problems. So this is one way of reducing potential spread for the next year. All right, and then our last two pictures that I wanted to share with you, the one with the lawnmower. Mowing your leaves is a great way to, one, reduce all the leaves on the lawn and to put them to good use. I like to use shredded leaves around my perennials to give them a little bit of protection for the winter. So that's a really good trick. It is also very good to use shredded leaves as a piece of amendment into compost bins and adding that in and stirring that in so we can increase the microbial count in our compost bins so they can do their job eating up plant material and leaving us with some very nice compost at the end of the composting process here. It'll be ready for springtime. And then the next one is a picture of tools, garden tools from the University of Wisconsin. And this is what I do at the end of the season. You need to take your tools, you need to clean them. You need to first remove the debris off the tools, scrub them with hot water and soap as appropriate, and then do some kind of covering with them. So if you need to, on pruners such as products, lubricants like WD-40 would be a great one to make sure you reduce rusting. And that's also a way to make sure that it's ready for the next year. We don't want to leave soil and we don't want to leave rust on tools. It degrades the tools and their quality and their effectiveness in the future, especially your hand pruners, but also your shovels, hoes, rakes. All of those need to be cleaned up. And when we store them, we always want to store them with the points up. So the handles go down in the container and leave the points up so they do not get wet and rusty in the bottom. So for instance, I use an old metal trash can that came from a school auction. And so they're nice, the tall ones. They work perfectly for putting my shovels and the garden hose and the pitchforks. And in this case, they have brooms in there. All of those work great because they point upwards. And the part that we use in the garden is not damaged from decay or rust. So it's very important to keep your tools in good shape. And as you finish using them, clean them up and be very intentional of cleaning them up and having them ready and in good working order in the fall. So then they're ready to go for the spring. Also with the lawnmower, as we finish mowing the lawns, you definitely want to either drain the fuel out or use fuel stabilizer if you leave any fuel in the lawnmowers, because the fuel breaks down over time and can plug up the carburetor. And if you choose at the end of the mowing season, you could send the lawnmower to the local small engine shop to have the lawnmower blades sharpened or replaced and have your lawnmower engine checked up so it's ready for the beginning of the next season. So just little hints going forward here at the end of September, going into fall. Also, your garden hoses, when you're finished with them, unscrew them from your water hydrants, drain out all the water, and then coil them up so they can be stacked or stored safely in an area where there is no sunlight. Sunlight through a window in a garden shed over time can cause weak spots in garden hoses, and that's why we get those occasional leaks, is because that material has weakened, and as water is flowing through the hose, it can shoot out little pinpoint leaks, or even worse, would cause a break, and then you either need to repair the hose, garden hose with a hose repair kit, or simply throw it away. So those are my suggestions here tonight. And so this handout is also available for anyone that has any questions, because I will put this on our Facebook page and send it also to the county extension offices in Western Nebraska and the West Central and Old Panhandle districts. Those counties will get copies of all this along with the recordings. So if anyone has any questions that are online right now, you are more than welcome to ask questions. If not, we are done for the season with Gab with the Gardener. I'm going to send out our Gab with the Gardener survey and evaluation. And if you fill out the evaluation, then you are automatically put in a drawing for our door prizes that Brenda and I have picked out, such as garden seeds, garden seed planters, soil thermometers. She has some really handy little items from her program on food safety and good extension recipes on how to use fresh produce. So here's a golden chance to get in the drawing, help us out with some feedback, and hopefully get a gift. Are there any questions?
No. All I have to say is I usually use the stabilizer in my lawnmower in the fall. And
Yes.
then in the spring is when I usually have them come and get my lawnmower and service it.
Sure. And you can service it in the spring. Absolutely. That's a very good option. So you can do it in the spring or you can do it in the fall. Either way, it's just really important that your engine and your carburetor are in good working order, that there is oil in the crankcase and that it is clean. Maybe the oil needs to be changed out, or an air filter, especially during the fall. We'll get very dusty as we mow over all those leaves. And then finally, making sure that we have nice sharp blades to cut the grass for the next growing season. So getting ready for cooler weather.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Brad, Wanda, do you have any comments or questions tonight? I see that you're on.
Yeah, we're outside your door.
Oh, you're outside my door. Okay.
You left it locked.
I'm sorry. Well, we'll finish up and I'll let you in.
Okay.
Does anyone else have any questions? If not, I thank you so much for coming out and participating in the program over this summer. It's been lots of fun and hopefully sharing new information that's available, that's timely for here in Western Nebraska for people who are gardening, whether they're gardening on the plant side, gardening and working with landscapes in the vegetable garden or the fruit trees, and also what to do with the fresh produce and how to take care of it safely and produce a good, tasty, safe product. So thank you for participating in our program. And we look forward to having another series coming up in 2022. So thank you again, and we will see you all later.
Next